So
go WebXR.
So I'll just go ahead and give a quick overview of
Yes, please.
the company and what it's doing, and we'll go from there. So Flow Immersive, well, let me, a word about myself. We started Flow Immersive 5 years ago, and I do have some interesting education in my background. At one point, I took a couple of years out of my otherwise high-tech career and started a K-8 charter Montessori school here in California. And we managed to obtain a 35-acre site and build it out and open with 120 students. And it was quite the ride, I'll say. Education is a crazy environment compared to high tech, I think. Much less
right back at you.
much less predictability in its world than I expected, I guess. But I learned a whole bunch about that and actually helped write the curriculum, and of course the hiring and all that stuff. Some of those core ideas actually have had a big influence on Flow, because in a Montessori environment, one of the key ideas is how concrete can you make the ideas for your audience, for your students? How can you help them see complex relationships and file each lesson into a place where it has context with all other lessons, and therefore it's not lost in space. And those relationships help give it all meaning. Even the 3D manipulatives help us build 3D mental models. And that is essentially what Flow is doing. It's helping to communicate complex information and data in a way that the audience can build concrete 3D models of that information. They want to be able to see the big picture, the forest, and drill in and see the details, see the trees, maybe even down to the leaves. And in so doing, you're fundamentally changing the way people communicate ideas. Instead of PowerPoints, where you dumb everything down to 3 bullet points and an image and maybe a few bar charts, you can maintain maintain the concreteness of the topic, because you actually can work with the data live, as well as make it engaging and be able to see better relationships. Since we are primarily enterprise and public policy focused, our goal is to help people make better data-driven decisions. And very soon here, we're not ready to announce a date, but within the next few months, we will have the Flow editor, which will enable anybody to build the things that we're building and that we're going to show today. And we're pretty sure we're going to have a free educator model for that. So, yes. So that's on soon. Anyone will be able to build what we're going to show you today, and that's the primary goal of the company.
That's great news. That's great news.
So I'm going to pass over to Michael. He's going to introduce himself and start to show you, because it's time to stop talking. It's time to start seeing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. Hi, everybody. I'm Michael Nino. I'd like to say I'm a recovering management consultant. So prior to this, I was at Deloitte Consulting. And I got to experience firsthand this divide between, what we actually did a lot of time on these projects, where finding the algorithm or finding the insight was not necessarily the hard part. The hard part was how do we effectively communicate this to an executive team in an understandable way? We spent most of our time sort of churning through the PowerPoints. And so I like to say that I sort of got to that maximum amount of copying and pasting out of Tableau into PowerPoint, adding some circles and annotations, and that's sort of how we did everything. And so prior to that was at MIT for my MBA. Prior to that was also in consulting. So that's sort of the world I come from. And it's been really exciting, I'd say, especially this last year, to see a lot of our content really resonate in the education space. And so as evidence of that, I post quite a lot of videos as the data guy, and have a following of around 100,000 people. And it's mostly all content that's related to, data. That's basically all I do, just tell some data stories. And they're impactful. And it seems like the one insight I would relay to this group especially is that Gen Z seems to be this camera first generation. And when they see these augmented reality data visualizations around them, they seem to just intuitively accept it and see that as natural. Like they're not questioning it. And there's something really interesting about their approach to it that I think is worthy of note. And so let me take a step back now, and less from the EDU perspective, and give you just more context on exactly what we're doing. And I would also invite you, well, actually, let me go through just a few things here, and then I'll invite you in. So one thing we emphasize is that we want to integrate into everything, you know. And so I'm showing you this Zoom integration. So what you're seeing behind me is a Flow. So it works on flat screens, it works on phones, it works anywhere because it's just wherever your browser is. Because ultimately what we're solving for are three specific things. One is levels of engagement in a meeting. Is your audience actually paying attention, or are they checking their email, doing something else? Two, levels of understanding, especially when it comes to data. How well are you really absorbing that content? And three is levels of interaction. Too often, we're stage on a stage, you know, preaching out to everyone in listen-only mode that has their video off and just sort of listening and nodding, but not really paying attention. And so how do you enable people to have more of this many-to-many interaction? So those are sort of the fundamental communication problems that we're trying to solve. And in the enterprise context, that helps drive data-driven decisions and a sales conversions. And I think in the EDU context, it drives understanding, it drives learning. I mean, that's all we were after. And where we sort of sit in the world is that we're adding a narrative to data. So if we think of data as sort of this analysis portion, if you're deep in the data, working with dashboards, et cetera, you can extract these ideas and implications from that data. And typically you then put it into a PowerPoint as 3 bullets. And data storytelling is sort of this combination of the two. It's merging this narrative with the actual data itself in a way that you can explore and come to conclusions together. And it's how we drive action. So that's really this gap that we're filling, that no one has really addressed, and is currently being addressed by a few solutions in sort of data storytelling. And so as one illustrative example, this was a map that was quite popular in 2016, where Donald Trump would tap that the whole country voted red. And that the counter argument to that is that land doesn't vote, people vote. And if we adjust the magnitudes here, we can actually see the number of votes cast in more of the population areas are typically Democrat. And so let's actually take a pause here, because this is the VR group. So I'd very much encourage people to actually join me in this live presentation. This is a live presentation I've been sharing this whole time. So if I can encourage everyone to go to flowimmersive.com, and you can use a VR headset, you can use your mobile phone, you can use your computer, you can use a Magic Leap headset.
Quick
Just to be
question.
clear,
Yeah.
we're only supporting the Quests 1 and 2 right now in terms of VR
That's
headsets.
Understood.
It
Quick
does
question,
work on
though.
others, but those are the ones that we fully just know it works on and supporting.
If I join in a browser and I join, 1 second. If I join in a browser and my AR-enabled mobile phone,
It's a browser
well,
anyway.
my headset, will I get lots of echo?
No, we're
No.
going to continue to use the audio from Zoom. And
Right.
we'll
Only
continue
one
to
audio
share.
feed. Great. Great.
We're going to continue to share. So a Flow meeting actually doesn't have audio. Our customers
Great.
seem to have been very happy to continue to use their Zoom or other web
That
conferencing system.
Okay. All right. So I'm joining on the browser, my mobile phone, and in the headset. Here we go.
See a few heads there. I see Jason. Just give me a wave. There we go. I see some people on the phone.
Laurel.
And you can either keep a participant name or enter your name. I'll wait the moment just as more people jump in here. And
And
I'll,
let's just
the website
make
one more
sure
time is flowimmersive.com, FLOWIMMERSIVE.com. I know when you're wearing a VR headset, you cannot see me. So.
Yeah, I got it.
Can we move our avatars, or are we in fixed positions?
You can move your avatars. You'll use your joystick on your controller, and it goes based on the direction your joystick is looking. That's how you'll move through the space.
And if we
Right.
don't have a
Already
joystick,
crazy.
So just real quick, let's just go through each device quickly. So
Yeah.
on a, here, let me remove the spotlight here. On a Quest, it's your thumb joystick on your right-hand side will move your avatar. On your phone, you can wipe and spin and pinch and zoom. We'll talk about getting into AR on the phone in a moment, in which case you can just walk around it. On your computer, you just click and drag your mouse, and you can use your scroll wheel or your pinch, your touchpad to pinch and zoom. So I see some people moving their mouses and some people navigating. So experiment with, there we go. Now I see,
Cool.
see some movement in the avatars.
So before we continue, any questions or people having issues connecting, because now would be the time if you're having any issues to speak up, because we'd love to get any feedback or address anything before we continue.
I've got a great connection here.
Perfect.
Yeah, so I'm gonna write my name in. Yeah, it's amazing. I'm on all 3 devices. It's working really well.
Yeah, I'm glad. It's hopefully this is the easiest way you've ever joined a multi-user meeting before. If you can go to a website, you can join the meeting basically. And we can see each other. And obviously there's more we could do on the avatars, but even just this idea that someone can just point to something, right? That it's as simple as interacting by pointing, that's how you start to enable conversations and with students to feel present, to feel like they can actually participate in these meetings, not meetings, but lessons, right? So that they can point to something and ask, like, what is that? And that's a way more empowering thing than having to ask them to go back a few slides and what is that number there, and feel like they're on the stage. You know, it's part of that many-to-many interaction, this idea that we're in a similar space, able to see what each other are looking at, interact on our own, but still be part of the conversation. And then let me move one step forward, which is I'm progressing everyone along in this presentation now. And we're looking at something a little different, which is that the colors have updated now to be more representative of the ratio between Democrats and Republicans. And so, you know, the point of this is not to have a really deep political conversation during this time here, but instead to illustrate how by showing these data points through different lenses, we can understand in a different way. And that understanding drives, you know, in the enterprise, better decisions, and for students, hopefully better, you know, decisions later in life, and just understanding the content and feeling present in these meetings. You know, the mobile AR aspects that we have where you can actually walk around the data, it honestly is one of the most exciting things I always see when I give speeches at colleges, is everyone actually gets out of their chair and is walking around their content. And there's something about actually just getting up and walking around that everyone just lights up. I think everyone's just really kind of tired of just sitting and watching their computer screen. So I'll pause here. Would love to get reactions, any questions, or any further commentary. Jason or others?
You know, I would like to volunteer just a little commentary. I'm located over here in Oregon on the West Coast. And
just realized how it works.
I can see the political demographic. It's interesting because
Daniel, we can't hear you.
Why not?
Well, because you're away from the microphone of your phone, of your computer, because you're turned around.
Yeah, and
I think
Sage might have been speaking, if I'm not mistaken, and just couldn't hear you, or unless that was Daniel.
yeah, I apologize. I'm sorry, I was turned around. Yeah, so I'm in the West Coast. I'm over here in Oregon, and so this accurately represents what I reflect in my own community in regards to the political density and population. So I just wanted to say, like, you know, it's kind of neat how I can point or actually navigate over here. I don't know if you can see me, but hey.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I can see you.
And I'm in Salem, Oregon. I'm in the right below Portland here. But also just being able to see that vertical topography, Chicago really shocks me. It's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. You know, we like showing this example because it's just very easy to understand. You know, obviously we can get more complex and there's more things we can jump into, but you know, it's gives you a better understanding. It's that next level of detail. You know, one thing we sort of attribute is something that you can do inherently in spatial computing that you can't do elsewhere is is this idea of seeing the forest and the trees. You can see the big picture of what's going on, but then drill into more specific details. So drill into very specific counties here, but still at the big picture, see that it's mostly the population centers that are more democratic leaning, rural areas. You know, there's these sort of different levels that you can see simultaneously. So that's one thing.
For me, it immediately tells a story. I mean, I'm making an assumption, but most people followed the recent US elections very closely. And it was all data on screens and, you know, and graphs here and there. But seeing like this, the three-dimensionality of it tells a story. You're looking at Florida. Why was that a key state? Now we know. You know, how can there be a sea of red and the Democrats still win? If you look at the tall blue bars, now you know, and the density of up northeast, right? If you look at all that density up there, it tells a story immediately.
Yeah.
Yes, super powerful.
Absolutely.
I'll speak to just a couple of kind of non-obvious points. So obviously, we don't have the most sophisticated avatars, and that's we should and can do better. But for us, the content is king. It seems to me there's nothing worse than being in a virtual environment where you've got a bunch of avatars between you and the content that you want to explore. And as soon as you get more than 20, maybe 30 people in a space, as you all know, everybody's got to spread out. And then how big is the visualization and how can people interact with it? For us, we specifically make it so that whenever an avatar gets between you and the content, that avatar disappears from your view.
I've just noticed that, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And on some level, certainly we're sacrificing a sense of presence with that person. And if that person is a presenter, they need to kind of learn to stand to the side so that their avatar stays visible. But the trade-off of the content is king is, we think, a really important part of what we're focused on.
Interesting. There's a similar approach. We had an event at ArtGate, which is art exhibitions and museums in VR. And the avatars are minimal there because the art comes first. Yeah, very similar. This is amazing.
I think you're muted, Michael.
Thanks. So I just updated flowimmersive.com if we want to switch to the next experience. What are your thoughts, Jason? Or do you want to do something?
Oh, I thought you at least click through this one to show some different examples. But then,
okay, sure. So I'll quickly keep going through this one, but then we do have an exciting recent one that I can show. So just to extend, what do we mean by data, right? I think that first example, it's geospatial data. It's easy to see how the data maps onto the world. But another thing we can think of is network graphs. In this case, how does COVID actually reproduce and how does it grow exponentially? What does exponential growth looks like in 3 dimensions? And it should look very familiar here as this exponential pattern of doubling. And we actually had one video go semi-viral that actually compares sort of this mathematical model to what we actually see in epidemiology, where it doesn't spread at this very mathematical way, but instead is tied more to these super spreader events where 10 to 20% of people are responsible for 80 to 90% of infections. And that's fairly common for any sort of pandemic. So anyways, that's one other data type to push that further. And then lastly, this is looking at foot traffic data. So what we see here is a collection of different retail places in the United States. And positive is more foot traffic to that location. Negative is less foot traffic to that location. So we'll start, going through 2020 and then the beginning of the year, things are normal at Starbucks. It's cold. Then the pandemic hits. We're all at Costco, and then sucking up on toilet paper. And then the summer comes, and we've all been at home a little too long, and notice a few defects in our house and are all at Home Depot, working on our DIY projects. Obviously, I'm making up this narrative, this story, but that idea that I can add a story to help in your mind sort of understand this data and what was last year like just by looking at where people walked. That's how we're starting to bridge this gap of what does data storytelling, and why is it so important, both in terms of teaching, but as something for students to learn. How do they succeed in the business world today? Data is a huge part of it, but if you can't tell a story with that data, it's not just going to explain itself to people, and it's not just going to, reveal insights. They need to be able to communicate those insights, and that's, I think, part of the power of the platform that we've created. So I'll stop there. That's the end of sort of this this section. We can move into power and energy related content next. But yeah, I'll stop there.
Let's take some questions here. Yeah. Do you know of any neuroscientists using this for visualizing data from brain scans? Not using Flow, but yeah, I do know of somebody who's been playing with WebXR and doing just basic neural information, electronic information. There are some really interesting opportunities for trying to analyze the complexity around, I guess, biopsies and cancer types research, where you want to understand so much data crammed into a single vertical slice of a biopsy. And is VR a way that we can do that, really more effectively? We have a project in proposal into the SBIR, into the National Science Foundation, in order to explore that in more detail. But
yeah.
Other questions? Yes, Sage.
Yeah, Jason, thank you. I've been exploring Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, and Google Data Studio. And I am particularly interested in how I can demonstrate how students' interactions in the LMS can demonstrate or prove learning. And I have found some really powerful data mining, but yet still respecting data privacy and appropriation. I'm interested to see if this can you use Google Analytics data? Does it matter where the data sources? How do you feed the data sources into this?
Sure. So right now, the primary mechanism is just for you to do that data processing outside of our tool and generate CSV files and upload those into the tool. For some of our corporate clients, we're starting to work on live data feeds, that data integrations, and we'd like to do some continuous data feeds like stock information and even cryptocurrency content, so that people have a set of interesting data that they can get at to begin their explorations, as opposed to having to start from scratch on the data side. We have not done anything specific to Google Analytics or integrations to Google Cloud. At one point we had Google Sheets integrated, and we turned that off because we were having problems with the authentication. I think that we can get that fixed and start to do that as well.
Well,
does that help address your question at all?
It does, Jason. Yeah, no, that sounds great, because I have the ability to export flat CSVs from report level on the Google Data Studio, which gives me the right data to feed in for analysis. So that sounds really intriguing.
Yeah, and one thing we haven't necessarily shown, and if I can encourage people to actually take off their VR headset and look back at the Zoom link, I'm just going to quickly go through an example of how we actually build these, because I think that's pretty core to your question, Sage, but also in understanding how this isn't just applicable for you as an educator, but could be also enabling your students to create this content as well. So what I'm showing here on my screen, and I'll share it two ways here. So
go ahead and share. Thank you.
So you can see my screen two ways. Is to create a flow. So here is the editor, and this is just a website. So this is just a browser that I'm going to. And then what you can do is upload your data. So you can upload a CSV file like we were just talking through, or we can build a data integration or have sample data to select from. In this case, we're looking at global life expectancy data. So year, country, life expectancy of that country that year. And then what I'm going to do is create a swarm, which is our main data visualization element. And right away, you're seeing every dot come into place. And every dot is a thing. It is a row of the data set. And we can start to move through this in a more logical way. So I'm going to add a step, which is the equivalent of adding a slide in a PowerPoint deck or a keyframe into an animation. Then I'm going to create this scatter plot. So I'm going to, on the vertical axis, I'll put life expectancy, and on the depth axis, I'll put the different countries. And so we're starting to see this all come into shape. And in many ways, this is, humanity's greatest success, that we live longer, our children are more likely to survive. But in many ways, there's also humanity's greatest failures. There's more we can do here, so we can scale the size of the dots based on population. We can add a color scheme in here, etc. Let me add an additional step so we can actually zoom into sort of one of those negative elements. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to first create some connections, which is a fancy way to say I'm connecting these dots together. And then what I'm going to do is add one last step. And on this step, I'm going to add a filter. And that filter is going to look at the years between 1915 and 1920. And so this will be the 1918 Spanish flu. So this is the pandemic, our last pandemic, and the impact to life expectancy, which was quite profound that year across the globe. And so, the main point here is there's tons more we could do to the visualization itself, but the idea that I can build it in the browser without coding, I can hit save, publish, and share. And now this is live on the web. You can actually go to it with your phone. And actually, let me do one thing real quick. And yeah, so if you go on your phones, you can actually point the camera of your phone to this QR code. And go. And that will actually open this flow we built here, in a very quick minute.
Fast, yeah, love that integration.
Because this is not a multi-user flow, you can advance through the steps using the arrow buttons on the bottom right of the screen.
Or you can zoom in and out by pinching. You can rotate by dragging across the screen.
Yes,
that is correct.
And then the forward button takes you to the next aspect. Okay, then it organizes the data. Cool.
Yeah.
Again, it's spatial. That's really cool.
Wow.
And you can do that in AR, so you can walk around it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you can hit the AR button and then walk around it.
On Android Chrome, it's Web AR is fully functional, and you just find a flat surface and tap and can see the content in your space. On the iPhone, we need to use the Web XR viewer from Mozilla. There's a quick download. If you click the AR button in the upper right corner, it'll take you to that link.
It's working on my Chrome on iPhone.
Wait, is it really? Oh, wow.
In AR?
In AR. Oh, in AR? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you say that.
Can you show the QR again?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Where am I?
And this is the aspects that has really touched the hearts and minds of our audience, I think. This is why Michael's gotten 9 million views on TikTok in a 3-month period, because seeing sci-fi, seeing what we're so used to seeing in movies and sci-fi movies with walking around an information presentation, doing that on our own phones, especially with our own data, not only, in some ways it's very sci-fi and futuristic, but when you see your own data, it becomes just very practical. Gee, I can just lean into this instead of having to worry about a user interface. I can explore it with my cohort of friends, even if they're not in the same room with me.
Yeah.
All of those aspects start to become very practical.
You could imagine at museums being able to walk around data. Museums are starting to embrace AR already, but museums, if you could, like, data can traditionally be quite dry, but now if kids can interact with it, manipulate it, define it, sort it, organize it, and walk through and around it. Yeah.
Can you export the data as a GLB of any kind?
You
No.
cannot. No. Essentially, if you're, for the technical folks on the call, essentially we create a geometry, but then all of the rendering is done in shaders, all of the text, all of the dots, all of the lines. So it's live code as opposed to a geometry and textures that can be exported.
I have a question when it's open.
It's open.
All right, so besides everything VR and education, one of my great longtime passions is genealogy. And I have a dream of being able to walk through my family tree. It's data, names, dates, places, all of that data, and actually even have photographs of people, you know, if possible, but mostly the data so I can get a sense of place and scale and where people were in migration routes and all of that. Talk about that kind of management of what would that look like? Make my dreams come true, baby. That's what I'm asking for.
Oh, that sounds like lots of fun. What it would look like is.
But I showed her. I can show one that's similar.
Go ahead, Michael. Go ahead and pull it up, and I'll just describe that. Obviously, we haven't shown like images and other media types within just these demos right here, but being able to pull up those photos for each ancestor is also quite doable. In fact, we have like a wiki integration. You can pull up Wikipedia pages and show that as part of your data structure. But yeah, let me switch spotlight.
Awesome.
Go for it, Michael.
Cool. So yeah, you know, related to what you're describing, which is essentially hierarchies, right? How do we show organizational information? Well, if we think about like the typical financials for a company related to balance sheet, cash flow, and income statement, that those are a collection of different hierarchy layers. That at its top level, we see overall assets and liabilities, and that each one of those, which should be equivalent, then break down further and further and further. And so if you can imagine a similar structure, this is essentially a very family tree-like structure here that is a hierarchy that you can navigate through. And so this would be the 2D version of that tree, right, that you would typically see. But, you know, we're not showing our ability to handle images and things like that. But I just want to show you what a little bit of some 3D aspects to this can start to look like, where the magnitudes actually have some meaning. It is the total quantity of assets and liabilities. So this is all dollar values. So anyways, this is not exactly what you're describing, but hopefully is a little bit more of a mental idea of what it means to like navigate through
The hierarchy
organizational
branches.
hierarchy.
Right, and going through all those different branches and finding that data, you know, the information that's within it. Now, how would you take that and make that the equivalent? Moving too fast, I can't get my screenshot so I can. There, okay, all right. How would you represent migration routes? As an example, let's say birds, animals, nature, or humans.
Absolutely. Well,
I don't have the answer, but I love the question.
Well, remember that everything we're doing is data. So
Right.
if you have any of the, you know, geolocations of those points, you just map it directly. In fact, take a look at the cell towers here and mapped onto a map in the prior steps.
But see, that is the next step would be, sorry to interrupt, but the next step would be taking the data points and actually showing a route. So can you connect like an airplane route or the, you know, point from movement from point A to point B? My husband tracks airplane flights all the time because of his work. And so I always imagine those as great migration routes.
Yeah, so we can do straight lines. We're not doing arcs yet, but yeah, possible to connect lines together.
Ah, interesting. Oh, I just love this. Does anybody else get a little too excited about
Oh,
this?
I want to get back in. I want to
You're
get
not
back in the
alone, Lorraine.
headset.
I
You
am
are not
so
alone.
getting excited.
Can we see this T-Mobile back in the headset again? This is cool.
So I got a cool one to show you guys next if we want to move to another flow in VR.
Yeah,
I
let's do
gotta
that.
tell you,
say,
Can I
this is the
Can I
second
just
time
share
I've
something
seen
that
this, and I love it.
I know. And the user experience, the ease of use, I mean, that's what's blowing me away because I am
Yes.
also on mobile headset and laptop, and I'm like, it's all working, it's seamless. So kudos.
Thanks.
Yeah, something else that I'm really excited about, and one of the reasons I wanted to do this event with you, and I know that your data analysis but the link from me to education is that this is coming at students really fast, right? And if we can expose educators and thereby students to this technology, they get acquainted with it. They get acquainted with the technology, with the way of thinking, with the way of learning faster. And then when they leave high school, college, university, they have been exposed, they have an understanding, they might know the skills, and it's a marketable skill, even just being exposed to this, I think. You know what I mean? There's going to be kids at school now who need to know how to visualize data beyond the PowerPoint. And so I'm really encouraged about the educators plan that you alluded to earlier. Very, very excited about that for the content creator or the flow editor.
Yeah.
One of the use cases, so we have over 2,000 people on a waiting list waiting to get access to the flow editor.
I'm
And
one of them.
educators, education is part of that piece of the puzzle. And some students, in college, they're looking for a leg up. They want to impress their professors, impress their classmates. This is getting access to flow and using it as in their for their reports or papers is a way that it's not just, oh, I want to learn this because it's going to be a marketable skill someday. No, I'm going to be able to gain value from this today in the work that I'm doing.
Yeah, it's not
I'd like
just
to yes and you
Yeah.
on that, Jason, is that I am not a book smart person. I am a visual person. So for me to actually take this and embed my information into it and be able to speak to it to a professor, that right there is mind blowing. And it's because a lot of people are not necessarily book learners, they're visual learners. And you just nailed book learning and visual learning together. I love
Yeah.
it. I think students are going to love this.
Are you going to take us there, or can you? I want to looky on that pooter.
This is not only
I have a book report to give.
Yeah.
Not a book report, but it's a.
Take it away, Michael. We're going to try to keep our mouths shut for 1 minute. I will.
this is not only for education, because for companies that can see all the variables that they have to manage, they can see when it's going up or down on production or selling or everything. I mean, the manage of data is so easy to see in this way. Maybe it's not that easy to implement it, but it is very good for factories, for selling, for many other things. Actually, this shows the sellers, the manufacturer people, how to manage everything, every single material they have to buy, the speed, how, I mean, this is fantastic.
Yeah. Question. I have a question. Could it be live? Could this data be live?
Yes. So underneath the system is designed to be handling live data. The flow editor right now is expecting that you're creating a presentation and you probably don't want the data to change between what you see now and when you give the presentation tomorrow morning. But especially as we start to integrate livestock data and things like that, I think it's going to
That's what I was thinking, or the stock exchange. You could have just imagined some stock traders sat there like the Minority Report, just immersed in the data. Sell, buy.
Not only that, if you can see the different points of sale that you have as a company everywhere in the world, you can see how the sales are growing up in certain places and other places are going down on real time. So this is amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. You're selling it. Let's
Yeah,
let Michael,
I say we
Michael
gotta-
talk through
hire you.
another data story here.
Yeah, so I'm going to encourage everyone to go back onto the headsets and go to flowimmersive.com. And I just updated the link there, so that will take you into the live experience here that we can all be part of. So I'll pause here for just a minute while people get connected. And let me know if anyone's having issues. I'll also put up a direct QR code in case you want to join on your phone. Or other device. So those are all the options. And I think one thing that we've definitely learned, and hopefully will resonate with you as well, is that meeting students and people where they are technologically is really important. If they just have a phone, if they just have a laptop, or if they have a VR headset, that you can meet people where they are, and that the best experience, yes, is going to be this immersive experience, but you're not forcing that to be the only way you consume content or share the experience, and that's really critical to us. And so it's very important that it works well on all these devices. And, I think the mobile implementation is actually one of the most beautiful things we have. So let me just double check here. Are people able to join? I see
We don't have as many so far, so go
I'm
back to
joined.
flowimmersive.com and
I'm joined now. Yeah, you have
What I
to
see is
exit
the
out
same
and
previous
re-type
page.
flowimmersive.com into your browser.
Yeah, you might have to refresh the page because
I
this
tried that, but it took me
the
back to
join
the
link
earlier.
has a new link to it. So you should be seeing.
You refresh the page, or we do?
You'll need to refresh. Just click the refresh button on that page on flowimmersive.com, and that will update the link that you click when you click join. It should, yeah, if it doesn't update automatically.
I think.
Yeah, when I just refreshed that page, it took me back to the previous graph. I have to type into the browser flowimmersive.com again. Updating that browser didn't work.
How to get out? How to get out from the?
Yeah, just
Press your Rami, your
Yes.
left hand, flat button, flat menu button, left hand flat menu button.
I did.
And
Or
then
the Oculus
URL
button.
flowimmersive.com.
yeah, now we're seeing
Right
some-
now, now it's that. So
Thank
now
you.
it
This is the
updates.
first time we've swapped out that link in the middle of a meeting. So
Yeah.
thank you for helping
It's
us out
working
there.
well. It's working.
can you,
well.
is there a microphone audio communication in Flow Immersive?
No, we're actually just using the Zoom call at this time. Interested in getting customer feedback onto whether that would be important and valuable or not. But
Okay.
Yep.
It's certainly handy if you're in headset, but frankly, in the enterprise space, people are more excited about the flat screen than headset.
Yeah, yeah,
We've had a
yeah.
hard time
Yep.
selling into VR and much better time with our mobile AR and our browser, computer browsers.
Makes
How about
sense.
iframe embed, Jason? Is there an iframe embed option for
Yes.
content?
Yes, and both the World Bank and UNDP have flows on their websites.
I still cannot get into the page.
Okay,
Were you able to get there, Rami?
This is going around and around the circle like.
Oh, it should be loading probably.
But okay. I hit again the join, and it says flow not found. Go to the home page. Should I write okay? And I have a list of maybe different.
Oh, I see what happens. Click the refresh button on flowimmersive.com again. It's trying to take you to the old meeting link, essentially. So for whatever reason, it didn't update that button for you. And for everyone else, I did go back to the very beginning. So sorry, I took away all the content that you may have been exploring on your own. So I'll push that. I'll push it forward here so you can see a little bit more.
I'm in the immersive.com, and it says join.
Yes.
yes.
Yep.
All right, so I just wanted to say, you have the ability to control our experience as well as we have the ability to control our own experience.
Correct. Basically, I have like presenter rights.
Watch
to
out, students.
Go ahead, sorry. Oh, sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I just said, watch out, students.
Right, yeah. And we can customize that control, but it works quite well to just have control. Like, okay, we're gonna go to the next step. Everyone come with me. And then you can sort of explore a bit more on your own while we're on that step. But we sort of bring everyone along. So let me just double check on Rami. Are you able to, or what do you see? Oh, I see you now.
Yes,
Awesome. All right, so let me just dive in here, and I'll try to go quickly through this story. But this is a more recent current event, and if you could imagine, giving this presentation or having a student give a presentation about this, something of that nature. This is a basically root cause analysis of what happens in Texas. So that to understand this story, there's two things you need to understand. The first thing is that the alternating current, the AC current that's coming into your homes, is typically around 60 hertz. And if it drops below this 59.4 hertz threshold, it's actually causing damage to generators and motors that are on the grid. And so as a result, the power plants actually have circuit breakers that trip off if it's below that threshold for more than 9 minutes. So that's point one. Point two is that Texas is its own power grid. It is not part of the Western Interconnect or the Eastern Interconnect. It is its own grid. And so it doesn't need to follow interstate regulations. It doesn't have to follow some federal regulations, but it is its own entity that doesn't cross state lines. Now, on a basics perspective here, we're going to basically talk through the temperature, the demand in megawatts, the supply in megawatts, and the price in US dollar. So on the temperature side, pretty basic story here. It's typically in the 50s, and we see it drop below freezing on average, starting on the middle of the 11th. And on the demand side, as it's been getting colder, people are using more and more heat. And with that usage of heat, they are using more electricity. So back in 2011, the last outage was at 59 gigawatts for maximum load. And so already here on the night of the 15th, we're at, or the night of the 14th, we're at 72 gigawatts. And so bringing this further on the capacity side, so where do we actually generate electricity? There's 108 gigawatts total. And of that total, it's broken down from contributions of gas power, so natural gas, wind power, coal, solar, and nuclear. And with that, each of these is assumed to be at 100% as of the very beginning here on February 10th. And on the evening of the 10th, we see the first decline in capacity generation. And it comes from wind mostly, where we see it drop to 61%, and a little bit of coal and natural gas, but mostly on the wind generation side. And so then if we step forward here, as things continue, we can really start to see what's going on when we look at the price. Because this is a very free market, it's one of the closest to a true free market economy. You can see in the price for what's going on with supply and demand. Because on the night of the 10th, we peak prices around $30. On the night of the 12th, we're already at $300, even though no customers have been turned off. And then on the 13th and 14th, just to give you a sense of scale, the price, and this is the settlement price for wholesale electricity, jumps way up. So I haven't adjusted the Y scale now, so you should be able to just look up at this crazy graph. And let me bring it back down to size so we can all see it. And we can see that we're at $7,000 peak prices here. Just to show that, no customers have been turned off, but clearly something is going on with these outrageous increases in prices. So we're now on the evening of the 14th, moving into the 15th, and that's when we essentially drop pretty significantly. And most of that drop, as we can see here, is in natural gas, which is, as a reminder, more than half, almost half of the total capacity generation. We still have some losses in wind, but it's not just those two, right? We also have pretty large reduction in coal, in solar. Even one nuclear facility went offline during this time. So it's all of these in combination that essentially get us to this point where we are at 67 gigawatts. Meanwhile, as a reminder, we're requesting 72, and so naturally supply can't equal demand. And so we go back to the evening of the 14th and the early morning of the 15th. It's 1:20 in the morning. And at 1:20 is when they order the first gigawatts worth of customers to be turned off. Anytime they turn off customers, that has the effect of helping keep the frequency of the current up. And anytime more power generation goes offline, the frequency will go down. And so they turn off customers, and then I think it was 20 or 30 minutes later, 3 power plants go offline. And so they turn off another gigawatts worth of customer. But the frequency continues to drop, more power plants go offline. And at 1:51 in the morning, they are officially below that axis, that line, that threshold. And so the 9-minute countdown has begun at 1:51 in the morning. So a very stressful 4 minutes, as you might imagine, go by before they order their next big turnoff of 3.5 gigawatts worth of customers. Now, as a reference point, the 2011 blackout, they turned off 4 gigawatts total for the whole time, the whole outage. And so these are not small little outage or turnoffs. They're pretty drastic here. And it was after that point that 30 seconds later, the frequency did go back up. And so they're out of that threshold. But the implications of if they were below there for more than 9 minutes, it would have meant that the whole grid would go offline, and that process of starting it back up would have taken almost a month to recover from, because the process by which you restart the power generation in line with demand is apparently not trivial, and would take time to do. So having that respect for just how important these decisions were and how necessary they were to prevent further disaster, I think is helpful context. Because even just looking at this, I feel like it doesn't do it full justice to see that this little red area, that is the 20 gigawatts of load shed total that lasted for 3 days, that caused more damage than Katrina. So $195 billion was the estimate, 70 deaths, affected 4.5 million customers. And I feel like we sort of moved on a bit, where it doesn't feel like there's much more to the story, but that's a very significant impact, and just shows how fragile our infrastructure can be, and how important electricity is to everyone, or to us. And just further illustrating, on the market side, so we can see we actually peaked at 9,000, which is the cap for settlement prices. And things came back on after 3 days and started to settle down as temperatures started to come back up as well. So there is my academic book presentation here on ERCOT, but has some industrial applications as well, and implications. So would love to get your take on this more illustrative presentation, and seeing all these different data points and how they interact together, and hearing this data story.
Remarkable. The politicians have nowhere to hide. When you see the data mapped out like that, like, what's your excuse? Like, it's all right there, right?
Yeah, and that's it's a good, interesting point, because I feel like this event did seem more political than I feel like most would anticipate. It's
I mean, I'm in the UK, and obviously it was a story over here because people were freezing and dying.
Yeah,
and it's like, what is going on? And then they said, oh, it's all this green energy. Like, what kind of argument is that? And then you see it mapped out like that. There's really no, I think in the age of like relative truth, having data like this to tell story is a real anchor. It's really grounding. You know what I mean? It's especially to teach students critical thinking, and to be able to read data. I guess reading data is a difficult enough story as it is. When having this tool seems like it makes it a step easier. Interesting, very interesting.
This was really interactive. I have a personal connection with this because I live in Oregon, and we went 1 week without power. We had a really strange ice storm that just tore trees down. Huge, trees everywhere, just unbelievable. And yet this whole energy crisis was going on in Texas. And so I couldn't feel bad for myself, because I still had a gas hot water heater, and I still had gas stove top, and I could still keep my family going for 1 week without power while people were dying.
Yeah.
It's that lived
Moving.
experience. I think oftentimes we disconnect the emotional layer from the data layer. And one of the hopes of VR is, I think, to help bridge those two. That, you know,
Impactful, yeah. That you have an emotional connection with it. Right?
It's a personal story, but going back to the technology and the data, this is really, you did a great job storytelling with the data. And I don't know if Laurel's still with us, but my wife is really interested in genealogy too. I see some promises there too for maybe visualizing data in that way for family history.
Just a little aside, it's a different app, but on SideQuest, I found an app called Noda. And it's also multi-user, and it's not interactive. There's no back-end content, but you can create your own mind maps, like almost drawing them, and you can create relationships, and you can add images and some Noda. It's on the SideQuest. I've created a tiny little family tree on there. It was a lot of fun with my son, 12 years old. He and I just made a family tree. Great little project.
I love it. Yeah, I played around with Node a little bit. It's I think it's wonderful to see people exploring, you know, how do you represent symbolic information in a three-dimensional space, just sort of re-representing the real world.
So we should be respectful of people's time here. We said we were going to take an hour, and we have.
We've only just started. No,
just started. Let me just give one or two sentences on, you know, the big picture here, which is it's really important to us as a company and individuals. We think that the world has some serious problems, complex problems facing it. All our enterprises, our companies, our local environments, our global environments. It's time to figure out a way to solve those problems. And our thesis is that PowerPoint isn't going to do it. That 3 bullets and 3 bullet points and a few bar charts is not the way we're going to get there. And PowerPoint just feels like it's all about dumbing down the content. So we're hoping that this is a way that we can, you know, really help solve specific problems on a daily basis, and the small problems, the big problems. There's so many different ways that this can really make a difference. So any way that we can engage with you guys and start to have, I think as a company, it's time for us to start to have an opportunity in the education space. So far I have enough education experience to know that it's very hard to make money in education as a technology, and therefore at some level we've been avoiding spending a lot of time there. But now with the SaaS model and with these tools, it's time to be able to do that. We're really excited to find partners among this group, of which I consider Daniel to be one, and maybe some more, to help us pull that off and make a difference in the EDU space.
Very much want to do that. And again, I think education, while it doesn't make money directly, you train the students and the teachers up, they come into the workforce, and now they're saying, hey, to their new company, hey, check this tool out, we need this tool, right? So it's a longer term investment, I understand, but I think it's strategically a wise one. So just for everybody to know, we're doing another one of these events on the 19th. Obviously, you've seen this demonstration. It'd be nice to make space for some new people, first of all. But guys, particularly when your editor, your Flow editor comes online, we'd love to do another event with you. And look, and maybe we could find some really compelling educational data, or just, I mean, this is already compelling educational data, but if we could find somebody from among our members who is in, you know, data savvy and could give us a data set that we could visualize specifically, that would be a great fun project.
Super. Yeah, let's make it happen.
Cannot thank you enough, guys. I'm so excited. So many of these events, so the UniVirtual Experiences, most of the events is on Altspace and Engage and other things like this. But I've gone out of my way to find people like you, Frame and Noda. I was going to do Noda. We're doing a Gorilla Tag session as well for PE with the educators. These little things, they add spice to a otherwise kind of can be a bit of a uniform program. So thank you so much, guys, Jason and Michael, for doing this. Thanks everybody for turning up. Please spread the word. Share on social media. It's Twitter at Flow Immersive, and
Yes.
at Jason Marsh and at Michael Di Benigno.
Not quite.
Or the data
Not quite,
guy,
but just do at Flow Immersive. Yeah, at Flow Immersive.
At Flow Immersive. At Flow Immersive. Okay, but I am going to follow the data guy. Are you on Twitter as well?
Yes, I'm on Twitter as well, as this is Michael D, and then I'm the data guy on TikTok. I think the data guy's taken on Twitter.
Okay.
Otherwise, I would try to do the
Okay.
same.
It is, I checked. It's taken.
Lovely. Thank you so much. And I'll see you again on the 19th. And yeah, let's
Pleasure.
visualize.
Thank you, Daniel. Everybody.
Really appreciate it, guys. Yeah. Well done.
Thank you, guys.
Congratulations. That's very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Remy.
Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, we're young and hungry. So if you guys have any friends or people that would like to, that you think could use this on the enterprise side, please don't hesitate to get them in touch, because that does.
I have recommended one or two people already. I'll touch base with you about that at some point for sure.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much.
I have a friend who is a specialist in that database. So he's going to enjoy that.
Gonna go, guys. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Daniel.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.